Thanks for tuning in to Ducks Digest. We got another big episode of the pod today. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest on Fan Nation, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Today, I got an awesome guest that I'm super psyched about. A good buddy of mine, YouTuber, Sports Chat 503, aka Ryan Winter. Ryan, how you doing, man? Glad to have you on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Max. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, man.
Right on, right on. So, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Kind of threw some ideas around to put this episode together, but kind of an episode that a topic, not an episode, a topic that I thought would be fun to start with today is talk about the uniforms.
Oh
So,
yeah.
let's hop into it. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so we can get this up on the YouTube so people can see it. But yeah, so you're seeing my screen okay there, Ryan?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I like it. I think it's kind of cool. They went to the futuristic, but they went with a little bit of the throwback on the shoulders. I do like the color of green. They've been going with that for the last couple years, apple green or whatever you want to call it. The big numbers I like. The different type of font on the numbers. They're trying to do that. Especially you can see it there on Johnny Johnson. You can also see the weight room paying off some of these guys. I really like where they've gone with just having the guys be in their own uniforms rather than, a couple 5 to 10 years ago, whenever they'd model these uniforms, they'd always do it with some random guy, or they do it on some mannequin. It looked really weird. So I think it's good to see the guys in the jerseys, and they like it. They like going to the photo shoot and doing the whole thing. But I do like the winged helmet. I thought the winged helmet was a pretty cool look, kind of a throwback in the Marcus Mariota thing. The gradient color is pretty cool as well. You were talking about maybe not digging as much the chrome on the yellow helmet. I kind of go with that a little bit, but what I really like is the technology of the jerseys. I think that's really what it's really about. The coolest part about being an Oregon fan and having your team on the jersey, there's that chrome on the yellow, is to see the new development of the jersey, actual like technology of the jersey. And, this is a jersey that the Ducks are going to wear this year. The NFL is going to wear it in like another year and a half or two, maybe. And it's just cool to see just how they design it, where they put the different seams, and how they make it so tight on and actually form fitting for a guy like George Moore there. At the same token as a guy, like Johnny Johnson III. I think that's one of the other things. Historically, as a big guy myself, big guys didn't really look that great in jerseys, and now they're trying to make them a little bit more form-fitting. They actually cover the whole guy, and instead of having, the back hanging out or whatever. So I do like the all one color. You've seen a couple of these pictures where they do, all yellow socks with the yellow shoes, with the yellow pants, with the. But I also do like having the cross color connection where you have a green top with the yellow pants. So I'm always into the jerseys. As a kid myself, personally, I grew up in the 80s where, in the 90s where they started to really kind of develop jerseys a little bit more. Yeah, I love that pick there. I just love that they gave George the center, a guy who's been there for so long. They joked about that on Twitter. They said George has been here for, this quarterback, that quarterback. They list Fouts and everything. But Brandon Dorless, I think is ready to go this year. And Noah Sewell, I mean, I don't know if they make the bands big enough for him. He's looking like Ultimate Warrior with those things on the side of his arm. These guys are hitting the weight room hard. I think that's one of the coolest things for me is just to see these guys, the transition of these guys over time, coming in as freshmen and leaving as seniors just absolutely shredded.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Just to kind of run through a couple of my quick thoughts, on the uniforms. I think I was looking for the tweet the other day. I was tweeting about the placement of the O on the uniforms.
Uh-huh.
If you remember, in I think last year they had it where the Nike swoosh is now kind of over to the side.
Yeah.
But I think that this is a much cleaner look. It's something that they've done in the past, so kind of going back to what worked. And then they also kind of have some little wing elements within that little patch on
Yes.
the center, which I think is cool. Love the gradient, the transition from the yellow to the green here. You touched on that a little bit. And then I don't really know what to call them. They kind of look like maybe some studding of sorts on the shoulders. I don't think they're ducks or like birds or anything. You can see it here with George Moore, like the black is highlighted by those little yellow things. But I thought it was really cool that they went to bring that back. And it's a simple look, kind of sticking with a little bit of what we saw last year. but then adding in some of those finer details, like you were saying. But you just know that they're going to have something crazy for, a big game. Like I mean, I'm not going to promise anything, but I'd be absolutely shocked if they went with one of these uniforms that we're seeing now for the Ohio State game, just given the hype that is kind of going into that matchup.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Just if you scroll back onto that picture of Dorless there too, the close up. Even you can see it in just the knee pads. Those are built into the pants. They're designed to where they're cut on the outside. They give more flexibility. And for years, guys didn't want to wear knee pads because they were uncomfortable. They didn't stay in the place of the pants or whatever. And just the cool design. I just love the design. I got a bunch of my friends work out at Nike, and I've talked with a couple of the guys who are in the process of doing the design work, and it's great, man. It's one of the coolest things what Oregon has going for it. I really think the link between University of Oregon and Nike is an organic one. It's not forced. It was a natural process, but then they started to understand, hey, these kids have some really cool ideas. Let's bring them in, and let's really start this process of getting in-house player involvement and feedback. That's where the diamond plate came from originally. That was the original diamond plate. Was awesome. The wings, all that stuff came from the kids, and why not? So I really like this design. It looks like you've got a little bit of the retro with the diamond plate. And for these guys, the diamond plate era, this was retro. They were little kids. They were in elementary school when the diamond plates were on. So, or even younger. So for us, maybe as some old schooler Ducks, we kind of see it differently. But we love the green and yellow. That's another big thing. I think there's a pretty big proportion of the student population and of the alumni, everybody else connected, that would rather see green and yellow. They don't like as much the black or the gray or the other sort of uniforms. And I can go both ways on it, but I do kind of prefer, out of all these jerseys, my favorite jersey is the all green with the yellow. I mean, that screams Oregon. I like the white jerseys as well. I do kind of like the white with the green pants rather than the all white. I'm not superstitious, but for whatever reason, the all white we've done some weird things with those sometimes. And I like the green helmets. I think it's hard to match the green on the helmet with the green on the jersey. It's really difficult to get those exact. And I think they've done a really good job with it. And again, player feedback, player input always helps. And then, not to mention, then just for going another second, it's not like it's a direct jump to go to Nike and they start working at Nike immediately. No, they get opportunities to kind of do work on that team as a student. And then when they go out, if they do choose to do design work or other sort of stuff and be a creative, then that's cool. They might have an opportunity for that work in the future, but they're going to have to apply just like anybody else. They're going to get maybe a leg up on the competition when that comes down later on. But there's been some really successful Ducks who've made that leap to go over to Nike and be on that team. And then that's even cooler, the fact that you got alumni sitting around the table with the young kids coming up with these new designs. And these designs were, all come up basically probably 2-3 years ago. So it's pretty cool. I love it. I thought the Ohana jersey was one of the coolest jerseys they had done.
Yes.
For the last 20-30 years. I do think that stands out to me. And I would love to see that on the road in a white. I think that would be just tremendous. So I do think that could be something that you could flirt with the Ohio State game. You said maybe a different jersey for the Ohio State game. That would be pretty sweet to do something like that.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. That's something crazy. I've never even thought about that one. Just to wrap up the uniform discussion real quick, I think my favorites are these the white ones, of the ones that they released. I think that just a little bit of yellow thrown in there would be really clean. Something reminiscent of the USC game from 2019, I believe. That would be really cool. And then you see how strongly received the Jordan and Ohana uniforms as well are by recruits. They get those photo shoots at the U of O on their visits, and they're just those are one of the favorites. So definitely doing a lot of special stuff there as far as the uniform goes. But let's talk about the on-field product. What do you say, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. Do it.
Let's do it. So I think one of the positions that people just get so excited about every year, and it's definitely got a tradition of excellence here at Oregon, is the running backs. You have CJ Verdell and Travis Dyer returning, but there are so many capable young guys that could hear their name called this year, down the line.
Yeah. Well, in a normal year, they would, right? In a normal year, both those other guys would be ready to get going. Most of these other guys would be having an opportunity to get going. COVID changed the game for this whole lineup this year. This is such a strange year where you have, I was talking to Keith Brown about this. It feels like over a year ago, where he said, feels like his freshman class and the freshman class above him, Noah Sewell's class, are like almost the same class. They've like combined in a weird way, and it is going to get interesting. I think there's a lot of talent in the running back room. Having, CJ Riddell, I think it can even be underrated a little bit in what he can do. Very, very strong back between the tackles. Doesn't have a lot of mistakes, even though you look at the Stanford situation when he was young, and maybe some of the other games where he early gave up the ball. But he pretty much is a strong running back with the ball in his hands. But he's a traditional back. And I think a lot of people get lost in the idea that they want something fancier. They want the Reggie Bush. They want the guy who can run out of the backfield and do a variety of things. And I think CJ can do that as well, but I just think he's a much more traditional back versus a guy like Travis Dye who can do just about anything on the field. I think he's very versatile. I think he could take snaps as the quarterback, probably even in a playground sort of situation. I mean, seriously, the guy is just an athlete, and he makes plays, and he gets first downs. And so I think both those guys are really steady. If you were an offensive coordinator and you had two running backs that have had this sort of success since their freshman year on a program like Oregon, I mean, these guys are studs. So then you start talking about the guys underneath them, and it's like, oh my God, everybody's favorite running back is Sean Dollars, and we love this guy. He's a great guy, great individual, and he's going to be explosive. He just hasn't had the opportunity. And then he gets that injury, which was just devastating, knocks him out for the spring, but I think there's a lot of guys there. You talk about Cardwell, you talk about Seven, McGee coming in. These guys are young, they're hungry, and they look the part too. I mean, these pictures that you were posting online and the pictures that we're getting from, Duck, everybody else out there who's doing their thing, these guys are ripped. These guys are coming in freshman year looking like grown men, seniors, juniors in college. That's a rarity. I remember when DeAnthony Thomas came in his freshman year, and the guy looked like a freshman. He looked thin. I mean, he was an explosive player, don't get me wrong, but these guys don't look like that. These guys come in cut up. So, I think the running back room is strong. Losing Cyrus, I do think is an issue because you have that big running back that you've depended on in years past. But Benson's a big running back, and I think you can fill the gap with other guys there. And I don't even know if you necessarily need the big running back in some situations. I think you can give the ball to CJ on a third down play just as easy. So I do think CJ is looking at an opportunity to be an NFL running back. He looks to me like an NFL running back. Size, strength, speed. He just needs to have a great year this year. Stay healthy, and hopefully they can feed him the rock. I like to see Travis Dye out of the backfield, but I wouldn't mind seeing CJ have a lot of carries this year.
Yeah, CJ is another guy, just like Johnny Johnson, he is cut up. Like, that dude is just shredded. People can say what they want about his durability, but when that dude is on and the line is clicking, man, it is a sight to behold. And I also just you talk about Travis Dye. I think myself, obviously when he committed to Oregon, I wasn't in Eugene. I wasn't, a beat reporter at that time and going to practices. But I really didn't expect much out of him. Like, okay, yeah, he's Troy Dye's brother. He's a smaller guy. He's fast, but that dude just gets it done straight up. And I think that, to go to your point about, wanting a bigger back, Cardwell looks like he's college ready from a physical standpoint as well, 6 foot 215. And it's just another, example of how much the program has changed and how much higher the bar is being set, whether it be just talent or, where you're at physically under Cristobal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at the guys on the other side of them, those linebackers, those young linebackers. I mean, it just keeps getting crazier, and that could be because of the recruiting, but also I think it's the strength and conditioning. I think the strength and conditioning across the country has really changed last 10, 15 years in the high school level, and these kids are going specialized training. They're going to these different sorts of different ways of training in the summer and in the off season, and they're going to specialists. So I think the future is very bright for the running back room. This is a year that's going to be very interesting because of CJ getting and Travis Dye, you know who you're going to get with them. You know you're going to get those solid numbers. It's just whether or not those other guys even going to get touches or not. And sometimes in the running back room, especially this year with being so deep in the wide receiver and tight end room, well, they might be throwing the ball a lot too. So you might only get a chance to have a certain amount of running plays a game that maybe in years past with the type of line they have, maybe you would lean on them more.
Yeah, and something to be excited about. Ryan, you talk about getting those snaps. Is if this Joe Moorhead offense can get to producing at the clip that they want it to, they should be just blowing teams out of the water. And then at that point, you don't even need CJ or Travis to be in the game, and then you can get those guys some snaps and really take advantage of that 4-game redshirt rule to you kind of pick and choose your spots, and you can see how they match up against some of the higher end teams in the conference.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was in communication with Aaron Smith a lot through this winter, Cross Patton as well. Those guys had a great spring and fall camps, and people are excited about this. That you're 7-8 deep, it feels like, in the running back room. All can tote the rock. So I don't think there'll be a problem there. It's just about injuries. You got to be prepared. I think this is a year where the Ducks can sustain some injuries and not really skip a beat.
Yeah. And the people that are going to be paving the way for them, we got the offensive line, certainly a position that isn't glamorous and doesn't get talked about enough. But when you have Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal on the staff, you're going to have some pretty big bodies there. And, that's a position where it really looks like they're starting to get that too deep, right? You want that dependable depth, and we're seeing that across the board, but really at the offensive line, we got some maulers this year.
Oh, big time. Yeah. Offensive line is just, again, I tend to think if you look back on different schools that have been successful, what are they known for, right? You've got running backs, you've got quarterbacks, wide receivers, most glamorous positions. Nobody talking about the offensive line, but everybody who knows football says you win in the trenches, right? So it's about how you have that balance. How do you achieve? And that Ohio State dominates on their offensive line. That Alabama dominates on their offensive line. Clemson. These are the best schools in the country for a reason. It starts with their low line. And Oregon has always had good offensive linemen, but maybe not the collection of all of them at the same time together. Yeah. What I mean by that is 1 or 2 injuries, and all of a sudden now you got a real shakeup. There's been times in Oregon's past where they lose 2 offensive linemen. They have to move guys around. They're very thin on it in key parts of the year, and you lose communication, all these kind of things. I was seeing the reports that they already are moving Forsyth out to guard and putting Jackson in there and putting other guys in there. They did that with Marcus last year, and I just love that they preach that versatility. And guys who are inside guys or guys who are outside guys, it doesn't matter. Guys are going to play a lot of different positions and have a lot of versatility. And then that also helps with knowing all those different points as well. So not only, like you said, are they creating a great 2-deep, but then that 2-deep itself is very flexible. So it's just they are right there for it. I think George Moore's going to have a great year. He's the guy who it feels like is the veteran of the whole group that's really going to lead the thing. I do think Cristobal is loyal to the guys who've been here. We've seen that in the past with the Lemieux, team, Hansen, all those guys. Those guys played a lot of snaps. So I'm assuming that you're going to see the older guys get a majority of the snaps. But I do think you're going to see Kinsley come in here and make some noise. You're going to have some other guys, maybe Logan coming in. There's other guys who are going to make their presence felt quickly. But I do think it's going to be what you saw last year. You bring back basically everybody who you wanted to bring back offensively, right? Including your guys up front. So, Forsyth, I think, is going to be a big name across the country. He's already starting to kind of get a little bit of buzz there. He had a very good year last year, it felt like. And then TJ Bass, very quiet guy, goes to work. I saw just the other day when you guys were talking to Coach, right behind Coach came Anthony Brown with Alex Forsyth and TJ Bass walking out of the facility like they're already with him, just walking from place to place, like protecting him from the media almost. It's a crazy situation. I think that Ryan Walk was probably one of the best linemen all year last year. I think he had a great year. I don't know if it was because he had maybe lower expectations because people didn't know what to expect from him, but incredible guy, incredible athlete, and I think he's primed to have a fantastic year. And then Big Sala as well. He looks leaner, looks, to me, very athletic. And, you got Stephen Jones who can play a wide variety of spots. Jonathan Dennis, I think, is going to get a lot of playing time. So I think again, I think they're turning into a little bit of offensive line U.
Oh, absolutely. You talk about Kingsley. He was one of the guys that I wanted to make sure to talk to at the Oregon Football Media Day. We got to request, some players, and I saw that, he was open, and I had to talk to him. And one of the biggest things that I think, he wants to talk, make clear is that, sure, he's close with the Sewells and everything, and they're all from Utah, but this guy's going to be his own player. Like, to heck with the comparisons. This is another special talent that is going to make a name in his own right. He's currently behind George Moore, I believe, on the depth chart. We don't get too many updates from that super often, but fall camp just started, so a lot can clearly happen, and that first unit's looking pretty solid. But just some other people to go down the offensive line. I'm probably going to butcher this, but Faupe Lalolu. Mario calls him Big Ope. Like we were talking earlier, Ryan, this is a guy who was just absolutely massive coming out of high school. And certainly not all of his weight was good weight. And now you see him and I'm like, this guy's toned up and he looks like a college lineman now. And then, just there's so many names. You can talk about so many people. Jonathan Dennis he came in the class of 2020. I believe he was an early enrollee. He's going to be getting some run at center if needed, and he's getting shifted along the line. And then Logan Sagapolu, another one of those really big Polynesian players that just throw around weight like it's nothing in the weight room. He's nasty on the offensive line, and you just keep seeing all of these guys that are ready to go. And I think that you really don't need that much time to get to the level you need to be when you have a solid offensive line in place, a good weight program, and so many of these guys are coming in early to get a kickstart on their development.
Oh, 100%. I mean, a guy like Theope, that's a guy who that weight and conditioning team just drools over getting their hands on that guy. I mean, that's literally like Michelangelo chiseling the guy out of a piece of stone. I mean, that's a guy who comes in huge, but he's a very athletic guy. I mean, I saw clips of him playing volleyball in Hawaii that were just outstanding. I mean, this guy is built like a door, like I said before. I mean, he's a truly humongous individual. I've asked a lot of the offensive linemen that I've talked with, how big is this guy legitimately? And they're all at 6'5", 300 pounds. They're like, this guy's bigger than everybody by far. He's huge. And I do think there's a lot of young guys coming in too. Jalen Jeffers, I think will get there. Bram Waldron, I think Dawson Amarillo, his younger brother, coming in. I think you're going to see just this kind of just slowly build into a very, very nice offensive line that you can depend on year after year. Not only that, I think this is a school where they'll actually know who the offensive linemen are, just like you see with Ohio State, just like you see with Alabama, just like you see with Clemson. Some of these bigger schools, even the media, they're talking about the offensive linemen. They're naming them by name.
Yeah, and when these guys' time comes, kind of down the road, or even this season, I think we're kind of going to be in that place where these guys come in and you say, oh shoot, I forgot about him. It's like, yeah, he's ready. He's getting in the game. So offensive line, always going to be an interesting story point here at Oregon. The way we kind of had this set up is, touching on some offense and then transitioning into some defense. So kind of the last point I wanted to touch on here, Ryan, was we had just 2 days of fall camp, but we still haven't seen DJ Johnson. One of the starting tight ends for the Ducks. Mario talked about, his absence and said, we hope that he's going to be back with us very soon. So that's the information that we have to work with right now. But, he's a baller in his own right, and they're just loaded yet again at tight end.
Well, I think a lot of people were expecting the tight end group to be great, even without DJ Johnson. I think DJ Johnson was the biggest surprise of last year and could have, at some point in the year, maybe even at the full year, be the offensive MVP. I mean, I think he made some humongous plays for them. And I was very, very, very impressed. He went from the defensive side where he was making some plays and doing fairly well, to the offensive side where he was a legitimate threat to score. He was a major, major, major part of the offense. So when he made that move, he said he made that move because he thought he could produce better on the offensive side, which is saying something because I thought he was doing pretty well on the defensive side. So I do think the way that Mario talked about that it's going to be soon and not a big deal. But there's enough talent in that tight end room, and I think the two freshmen have really impressed people as well. The talent that they're bringing in is just next level to where you're gonna have that point where those freshmen are gonna push the seniors out the door at some point.
Yeah. You talk about those young guys. I talked to both Terrence and Maliki when they were recruits, and they were, just I was looking at some film of both of them earlier today, and I feel like Terrence is maybe a little bit more athletic than Maliki, but they're both just absolute studs. Terrence kind of, they both got, I should say, they both got flexed out in high school. So they're not just traditional tight ends. You can move them kind of all over the field, which is something that you kind of think about when you're thinking about the Moorhead offense. They can both block. I think that, maybe one of the things I was writing about this earlier today is I want to say Terrence came in a little bit on the lighter side, if you want to call it, like 220, 230. Mario talked about them at media day, and he was saying they're both in the 250, 260 range, and they're both 6'6". And we haven't even talked about Spencer Webb yet, or Patrick Herbert.
Right. Yeah. No, I think the retaining room is very stacked, and I really like what they're going to do. I think with Moorhead, you saw it a little bit last year. I do think what you saw last year was just a glimpse of what the actual offense could be. But I do like how they use the tight ends, and I think they're going to need to use the tight ends, especially the two tight end set, more often. I think having the amount of athletes on the tight end group like you have, for example, you can run I love the story when they talk about Spencer Webb in the Rose Bowl when Hunter Kampmoyer came in and started making some really good plays for them and marched him right down the field or had a couple 3 plays after he had some drops or whatever. Spencer Webb said that the big play there that right down to the 1 yard line was actually he was the decoy. So to be able to have a guy like Spencer Webb where he's much more of a wide receiver type tight end, and then have another guy on the side who can actually block for you a little bit better. I think it's fantastic. That's what I see with those two freshmen. I see Terrence as being much more of the downfield kind of guy, Maliki being more on the line kind of a guy, or in the flat. But I really like what the tight ends are doing, and I think obviously people would love to see Patrick Herbert be successful in his opportunity when he gets it. So these guys, they'll cycle them through at least those first couple 3 games. I think you'll see quite a few of those tight ends play.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have those 2 tight end sets. And then, we couldn't talk about the tight ends without talking about Cam McCormick, who's looking like he's back healthy now after battling injuries for what feels like forever. So hopefully he gets to see the field a little bit this year. But we've touched on offense. What do you say we switch it up and talk about a little bit of defense?
Love it. My favorite side of the ball.
How about you start this one off, Ryan?
Well, the defense, I think, starts with Noah Sewell, right? I think that's the guy who's going to be the guy who's going to make all the calls in the middle. Obviously, people are going to be watching KT. He's the, the breadwinner or the name brand or whatever you want to call it. But I think Noah Sewell is quite possibly the best football player on the entire team. I think you could put him at running back. I think you could put him at quarterback. I think he could punt. I think he could do anything on the field. And I don't know if there's a lot of guys in that same realm in the whole country that can do what he can do. And I do think part of it is being the younger brother to a whole group of all D1 athletes. I mean, all of his brothers are D1 football players. And in conversations with the other Sewell family members about this, they talk about how explosive he's been the whole time. Like, he has been this guy. And, I mean, he impressed me more than anything last year. He was, in my mind, the defensive MVP, and would just had an absolutely tremendous year. The way he tracks balls, the way he explodes through runners, his jump on the ball, he's just a knack for the thing. And he even on special teams, gunning, getting the ball. I mean, he's just a truly, truly gifted football player, and an absolute pleasure to watch. I mean, how fun is it to think about having a guy like Penei Sewell at a lineman position? Now you get to have that same quality of player in the middle of the field of the defense, making every call and technically almost making every play. It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, Sewell is just, it's so fun to watch his development. He was kind of thrown into it. I mean, I don't know if thrown into it's the right word, because he beat out older players as a freshman. But just seeing his development and how he carries himself out at practice. They were saying yesterday how he's made it a point to be more vocal. Seeing that he's another big voice on the defense. He's another leader on the defense. But I'm going to be curious to see how he does in coverage this year specifically. Not to say that he's not good at it, but just when you have guys that come in as big as he was, he's looking really toned up as well. With that raw athleticism and burst, I think that coverage is definitely a little bit more of a technique thing that takes some time to hone in and get comfortable with your body and everything at the next level, especially with a shortened season. So that's kind of something I'm going to be looking out for him in year 2 with the Ducks. But another guy that I think is going to be interesting to talk about is Bennett Williams, and kind of when we're having this conversation about the depth in the secondary, because he's played a lot of football yet already, but he hasn't really seen a ton of time for Oregon.
Yeah. Absolutely love Bennett Williams. I love what he's all about. I love his energy. I love the chip on his shoulder. Works incredibly hard. One of the hardest workers on the team. Very driven, has been around, has seen things. I mean, I love my conversation with him was just so great, talking about all the different transfer rules and all this stuff, because he's seen it. He's lived it, right? I do think there's going to be an opportunity with Jamal's issue, with DJ's issue, not really knowing what that's going to look like in the future, having a little bit of an opportunity, maybe gifted at this point in the game, because Bennett and Jamal are very close. They work out together a lot, and they push each other. And so obviously, it might come at a negative time, or maybe you got to deal with the situation that it is. But these guys are going to take every opportunity to go after it. I think Happel's the other guy who had a great year last year, solid player, been around, knows a lot about the game. I think putting guys back there that are very smart, Steve Stevens, guys who are really smart football players, are going to be just, the secondary is going to be awesome, I think, this year. The Ducks defense has been the better unit for the last 3 years. I think it'll continue to be the better unit. Maybe this next year going forward, they put a lot of really solid offensive players together on this team too. But defensively, they have been getting the best players. So, when you see KT, when you see Justin Flo, when you see Noah Sewell, and then nobody's even talking about Jackson LeDuc or Mace Funa. I think Mace is going to have just an incredible year. And I really like the flexibility that they have with their linebackers. You were talking about putting Noah in pass coverage a little bit. He wants to stuff the run. That's where his bread and butter is, right? A gap, B gap. But I do think he's flexible enough to move back. But I do think they're also going to put in a lot of different things. I've been watching a lot of Ohio State's offense, or Ohio State's defense, and they run a very kind of interesting little formation where they only run kind of 2 linebackers, but they have these safety linebacker hybrid kind of guys that can come up and cover a lot of different ways. They got 5 guys in the backfield, and it's a very strange setup, but I think Oregon's running something very similar to that, or they're leaning toward that. And we don't really know what DeRuyter is going to do this year, scheme-wise, that's different than what we've seen in the past, but golly, I think that this linebacker core could be the most talented linebacker core we've had in a very long time. And that's saying something, because there's been some really, really good linebackers at Oregon lately. And these guys Noah Sewell just impresses the hell out of me. And we haven't even really seen Justin Flo. And I think the way that they're going to work together is just going to be bread and butter, man. I am over the moon with how happy I think this young... And not only that, in this world of college football where you think maybe you only got 1 or 2 years with these guys because you see them at the end of their career, no. Noah came in as a freshman, playing as a freshman. And Justin would have played last year too had he not got that injury. I do think Isaac Slade leaving has a little bit to do with these young guys. I don't think he left because of the competition. I think he left because the coaching staff had made the decision they were going to go with the young guys. And I do think that is a tough situation for these guys with the transfer portal the way it is. They got to leave and go get a different spot because if you're a junior or a senior and you're getting bypassed by a freshman, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a weird kind of dynamic now with the way the transfer portal has gone, how early people are enrolling, and the caliber of players that are coming in. It kind of makes me think a little bit about Alabama, and it's how it's like, how do you sell that program? Obviously, it's phenomenal and everything, but how do you sell like, hey, we're going to be able to get some time here when there's just so much talent there? But I'm right there with you. I think that there's a lot of talent at the linebacker position. Maybe the second level is a little bit unproven, but the potential is certainly there. Excuse me. And I think there's a lot of cool playmakers. I was watching a replay when I was writing a story. I was watching the replay of DeRuyter yesterday, and Justin Flo was walking back behind, and he just looked at the camera. He was flexing, and when you're in the moment, interviewing the coaches, that may be something you don't realize. But
first thing I saw,
I love the dude's energy. You see his high school highlights. He's just violent. And he's just going to be so fun to watch this year. And we got that small dose in the spring game. I think that people are so ready to have something other than the spring game to talk about when it comes to Flo, right? He's super explosive and he's all over the place. And I think that we're only going to see, more high caliber players come in to compete as freshmen. And I think that just speaks to the quality of the program and the culture that's been built and the expectations that are, around Oregon right now.
well, I think for some guys, an injury is probably a good thing. It helps them pump the brakes a little bit. It helps them see things from the sideline. There's a lot of guys that have been the star player for a long time, and they're just going, but they don't really see it from all the angles, right? And Flo talked about that a little bit at the media day, how the injury helped him a little bit. Not a great time to get it, but why not as a freshman, right? Flo's the type of guy there is no off switch. I mean, he is on it. And I think his younger brother's in the same mode. And these guys just are in a different level completely. I mean, his flex thing that they sent the picture of, remember, that went viral a little bit, that was like last year. Okay, this is coming in. Now he's on the weights hard. And, so yeah, I saw that thing where you guys are all talking to the coach and he just comes out, flexes on him, and he's just got a different level. I talk with a lot of guys over the summer and set up interviews and do sort of stuff, but I do a lot of the conversation with guys where we just don't even set up an interview, right? And I had a lot of conversation with Flo where he was like, dude, I don't even want to talk. I want to let my pads do the talking. I don't want an interview. I don't want anything. I want this to be like a stealth bomber coming in. And I'm like, dude, all for it. I'm all about that because to me, I'm just trying to do what's best for the program, what's best for the kids, try to tell their story, right? I think part of his story is he lets the pads do the talking. Like, I think that could be the name of his novel when he's done with the whole thing. We haven't even seen it really because these guys were not hitting in the spring game. They were going through the motions. They were filling holes and making it look good on film, but there was no real pads popping. And this is a guy that wants to pop the pads big time. I mean, we haven't even in this fall camp seen the pads yet. They come on this next week, right? Thursday or Friday or whatever. So, man, it's so exciting. I hope always for all these young guys that they get a chance. They play good, they play fast, but they just don't get hurt, Some of these guys go with their hair on fire so hard that it's easy for them to get hurt. Some of these guys, maybe after an injury, look at it a little differently. Maybe they don't run into every pile the same way, or maybe they do, they play it a little more cautiously. So I think it could have been one of the better things for him in his whole career long term was to suffer that injury freshman year.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you're looking at the athletes that they have at linebacker, maybe somewhat of a little bit of a hybrid from what I've been hearing from coaches and players is Adrian Jackson. He's coming back looking healthy, absolutely shredded. I think we only have a couple minutes left here, Ryan, on the Zoom recording. Yeah. So we might end it a little abruptly, but the last thing I wanted to try to talk about is the defensive line and maybe some of these guys that are emerging behind Brandon Dorless. You got guys like Popo Amavai, Jason Jones, and Braden Swinson, big 44. I saw him holding the pads yesterday, and I kind of had to take a second and just say, wow, this guy is massive.
Yeah, the defense, I think, one of the things, losing some of those guys last year, who had been there for so long, maybe there's guys who they don't really know what they're going to get next, and I think that there's going to be a bunch of guys. Poti, I think, is going to be great. Keon Ware Hudson, I think, is going to be great. But I think that they'll be just fine. I think Popo's ready to go. He had a very weird year last year with the corona, and he said he lost 20 pounds in the hotel room and lost all his gains. And I think there's guys who are ready to go. Jake Shipley's another guy who I think might get a little playing time at some point. There's a lot of talent there. I think you could run with just Popo and Brandon Dorless and be good to go for a while. But they're gonna be circling a lot of guys in there, and a lot of those guys are young.
Yeah, no doubt. And then kind of going along with that, we have these edge defenders that kind of came in as outside linebackers, but they line up next to the linemen right there in the thick of things. A lot of talented freshmen there as well. You got Brandon Buckner, son of an NFL defensive line coach. Everyone's kind of heard that story. Mario talking about how he has violent hands. Yeah. Terrell Tillman, who just looks super, super athletic. Jabril McNeil is a guy that I think was a real steal for them all the way from, I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina. You're seeing all these different types of bodies, and a lot of them that are coming in don't need to play right now, but hopefully they get put in the position where they can get some of those meaningful reps as freshmen to kind of, speed things up a little bit in their development.
Well, I think having KT at that spot has really taken so much of the spotlight that there's other guys that are going to be able to really shine, who the people aren't talking about yet. And the way that they run these guys, it's very strange. Historically, you would think KT's a guy who'd come off the edge, hand in the dirt. Now they're saying he might not put his hand down at all. He might be, a guy moving around at the snap. I mean, to think of having your best edge rusher moving around at the snap 20 years ago would have been blasphemy. And now here it is. Now we're at that point. So there's a lot of flexibility. These guys are trying to put the best athletes on the field as possible, and they're trying to be very creative in ways they can use them.
I think that's one of the things that kind of got cleared up, obviously here at practice, but also at Pac-12 Media Day when I was down in Hollywood. KT kind of going back and saying, okay, I might have, people might have taken that out of perspective or context. He's not going to be, standing up all the time. DeRuyter saying that, basically I just want to squeeze every bit of athleticism out of him that I can, which is, it kind of makes you think for a second, well, why weren't they doing that, ahead of time? But at the same time, when he came in as a freshman in 2019, they were just dominant, and they had reached a level of defense that they hadn't seen in a while. So it's like, well, this is working. Like, why would we switch it up now? But I'm really curious to see how the defense all comes together, not only just from the players' perspective, but with all the hires that we've seen in the offseason. Nick Toth, he was a big addition. Jimmy Brumbaugh, guy coming from, another championship pedigree, played a defensive line at Auburn as well. Marcel Yates coming in from Cal, another guy that has worked with DeRuyter before. I mean, it's you try from a journalistic perspective, you don't want to just be sunshine pumping all the time and just saying positive stuff, because we got to talk about the bad stuff as well. Oregon's not a perfect team, but things are it's just like a wave, like a tsunami or a perfect storm of just, it looks like it's really coming into place and setting them up for success.
Well, and that's why I'm so pumped about this year. I mean, going into this year, it looks absolutely prime. I mean, you're coming off of basically back-to-back championships in the Pac-12 last year. You can say what you want about it. It's like an asterisk the whole year, but it is what it is. And you've got everything going. You've got talent. You've got depth. You've got a bunch of really hungry coaches. You got a coaching staff that's pretty solid, but none of these guys have really tasted that really heavy success yet in their career, and they're all chasing it. They're all hungry. This is how these kind of things work. You get a bunch of really hungry individuals all going the same direction at the same time, and good things happen. This is a year where Mario could really cash in. I mean, if you take a look at the national landscape, Oregon could really do some major, major things with a W that second week. If Oregon wins at Ohio State, it could literally change the face of the Pac-12 for maybe only just a month or two, but it could literally change the face of the Pac-12 nationally, how the national perspective of what the Pac-12 is. And that's a lot of pressure for Oregon, but I do think that Oregon has to make do with this. They have all the talent here. Now you got to get W's.
Yeah, it's I think it's year 4 of the crystal ball era, I believe.
Yep.
And you're seeing, even his oldest guys are only in their 3rd year. But or I guess only 3 years of recruiting. I don't really know where I was going with that, but they've been in the system for a while. They've been at Oregon. They kind of know what's expected of them. And you talk about it being prime, Ryan. Maybe this would be a cool way to kind of end the podcast. What are you most excited about this year, whether it be a player, a position group, a hire, a matchup, what have you?
Man, I'm excited for that Washington game at Seattle, dude. And not having them on the schedule last year and all of what went down at the end of the season with the COVID and everything else. And I think that game is one that everybody has looked forward to. It's already a game we already look forward to. As a guy grown up in Portland, we love to go up to Seattle and see that game. I think it's going to be a blast. I do think that Oregon has a chance to beat Ohio State in week 2. Michigan and Washington are playing that same day, and I think that Washington has a big chance to do something there. Even if Michigan is down, they still have the name brand, and I think it would do a huge amount for the Pac-12 if both those schools won that second day. And if those schools won that second day, then chances are they're going to go into that game possibly undefeated, both of them. And if you have that, you have a top 10, top 15 matchup. Would be humongous. I mean, that would be an absolute game changer to have both those things happen on week 2, build the whole resume, get a couple more Pac-12 wins under their belt, and then find themselves in a very unique position in Seattle. That's the game of the year in my mind.
Yeah, you think about it, they both go into that game undefeated. That could be the biggest game, for the conference, when you're just looking at who's going to end up making it to Vegas for that Pac-12 championship game. And, I think Michigan might be the most, I don't know if polarizing is the right word, but like, I'm just really interested to see what's going on there because like you said, they have all that history. And I think some people thought that Harbaugh was going to get canned, but they extended him, getting your butt kicked by Ohio State every year, I guess, isn't enough to drive you out of there. But it's just hard, right? Because like, what do you, if not for that, what do you expect him to go and accomplish? But they're still getting good recruits. I kind of hope that they can kind of get it together this year and maybe make that Ohio State game more competitive. Michigan, that is.
Yeah, well, I do think that Michigan has very high expectations, and maybe they need to temper those expectations a little bit. Ohio State has clearly been the best team in the Big Ten over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, there might be every once in a while an outlier. Penn State obviously has a great program. Michigan has a great program. There's a tremendous amount of good programs in the Big Ten, but Ohio State is dominating that league. As Alabama has dominated the SEC, as Clemson has dominated the ACC. I mean, there is no question. I mean, every single year in the championship game or in the championship Final Four, they're in the running. I mean, that's pretty obvious. So I do think this is going to be a big year for the Pac-12. I think USC has to be up in the running. I think the Pac-12 has to get at least 3 or 4 teams in the top 25 this year consistently throughout the season to get any sort of notoriety, to start to change the narrative. I don't know if the narrative is necessarily legit, but I do think it's real and it's out there. And I think that until Oregon wins a big game, until Washington and Oregon both have undefeated seasons going into the game against each other, those are the kind of things that make the storyline. You see it every year in the SEC when, in week 6 or week 7, you have 2 SEC teams, they're both undefeated, and it's the game of the week. And rarely do we have that in the Pac-12. We have teams that just, for whatever reason, they're losing, they're beating each other, whatever the case may be. But this could be a really big year. I think a lot of people are looking for USC to do some big things. And, if USC can beat Notre Dame, I think that's a big deal every single year. And then I think for Oregon, I think, God, that Ohio State game could be just an absolute windfall. If Oregon can beat Ohio State out there, it is going to be headline news across the country.
It just feels like everything has a little bit more riding on it with that news of Texas and Oklahoma, going to the
Yes.
SEC and the whole conversation around realignment. It's just like you need USC to be good. For the longest time, I was kind of like, well, why does that really have to happen? You know, if Oregon's kicking butt, then everyone should be fine. Like as long as there's one good team that's kind of making some noise nationally. But that goes to your point, Ryan. You know, you got to have multiple teams within your conference that have the ability to go into other conferences in these bowl games and really hold their own, which is something that we haven't had in quite some time. You talk about the Oregon Washington game being your excitement point. I'm going to wrap it up here with our last point. I'm so excited for the receivers. I mean, just when you think about the talent that is coming at every other position on offense, we just haven't really, I feel like we haven't really seen that explosion, that playmaking wide receiver since Dylan Mitchell, really. He had over 1,000 yards receiving, I believe, in his last year. And I think that the point can definitely be made that there has been no greater investment aside from offensive line from a pure talent perspective than wide receiver. And, watching Dante Thornton and Troy Franklin, and now we have Isaiah Brevard, who's also on campus. I had that picture of, the three of them in one little frame, three high school Americans in one picture. You can't help, it's hard not to be excited because they're just so fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. And there was, a time just 5, 6 years ago where wide receiver was a major question mark at Oregon. You've always had a history of good wide receivers, but you've never really had the depth of quality wide receivers that you have right now. Add to that the fact that you got the Johnny Johnson coming back and you have Jalen Redd coming back. Again, this COVID thing has really changed a lot with this last year. Not counting against guys' scholarship, or whatever, or eligibility. This could be a humongous year for those guys. I've thought over time that some of those guys are some of the best wide receivers we've ever seen. I don't know if we really give them the credit that they deserve, but they make humongous plays. I mean, Jalen Redd has been an absolute playmaker. And Johnny Johnson III, I think, is a huge. But these young guys are wild. And I think that you're going to see a lot from these young guys. I think they're going to put the ball in these guys' hands early and often. I think they're going to go deep a lot. Last year we saw it early in the year. It looked a little ragtag. It looked a little playground at times. I think it'll be much tighter this year. But I think they're going to go deep. I think they're going to spread the ball around. And Mosley talked about it in the article last week. He said the Ducks were one of the leading teams in the country with going deep, yards per play. And I think they're going to continue to do more of that. So why wouldn't you? When the wide receivers are this good, why wouldn't you want to get the ball to them? And that's not even talking about guys like Micah Pittman, who's come in as a freshman and been a stud. I mean, every time he can get his hands on the ball, he does something wild with it. Sometimes he only gets 1 or 2 looks, and it's amazing. I mean, he's a highlight reel type guy. So I think that they're just stacked. I'm with you. I think that's the most exciting group on the whole offensive side is the wide receivers.
Yeah, we're going to have to stay tuned for that. Certainly got a big test against Ohio State in week 2. But Ryan, hell of a pod, man. We were talking earlier. I'd love to get you on as many of these as we can.
Sure.
I think you got some awesome stuff to talk about.
Okay.
And, for the listeners out there, it maybe noticed that I wasn't as awkward and it was a little bit more free flowing with you on there. But yeah, man, just wanted to thank you for coming on by and hope to have you back on real soon. But very last thing, I gotta give you an opportunity to plug yourself. Where can people find more of you and more of your work?
Well, thank you, man. I'm in section 34, row 6, seat 1. If you want to check me out at Autzen, we're super pumped to get there. But no, I'm on Sports Chat 503, YouTube. I don't really do that much to promote the brand. I'm just a regular guy, get in my basement, I talk about it. I've done it for years, but it's really fun. It's a great way to be a part of the community. Everywhere I go, people recognize me. They say, "Hey, Sports Chatter, all right," or whatever. And I mean, just the other day, I'm in Bend. I'm playing golf in Sun River, and a guy comes up into the group and he's playing with us, and he's got the duck gear. I said, "Hey, you should check out I got a YouTube channel." He says, "Sports Chat?" He says, "I thought I recognized you." I'm like, "Dude, hell, I can't even get away from it." So it's really fun. I love interacting. I just love to chat. Anytime you can talk, I love to talk. And Max, I'm really proud of you. You've come a long way with, like you're saying, in your journey as a journalist. You got a very, very bright future. I'm super pumped with what you're doing. And like I said, to start this whole thing off, you ask great questions. You don't have any of the negativity that maybe other reporters bring to the circle sometimes. I think Cristobal likes your questions. He gives you really good answers, and I'll make sure at the coaches dinner when I see Cristobal to say give you a shout out because you do a great job, and I just love being a part of anything you got going on. So appreciate you, man.
Right on. Well, I appreciate all the kind words, Ryan. It's definitely been a trip, and I'm very fortunate and grateful to be here, man. Very last thing to wrap it up on. You can find more of me on Twitter at mtorresports. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel Max Torres. We're going to be on the podcasting apps as well as YouTube for this episode. And make sure to tune into Ducks Digest. That's si.com/college/Oregon for all your Oregon Ducks content. Been a heck of an episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.